Good evening, ladies and gentlemen in Grand Colony in Nigeria. You are hearing the voice of your elder statesman, Reverend Dr. Bartholomew Agbochano, coming your way this day, the 2nd of September, 2022. I did promise you that I will come your way on the NU meeting saga and the issue of payment modalities. And actually, those are the points I am going to address at this particular moment. Point number 1, the NGO meeting saga. For your information, as we plan towards the meeting of the NGO heads, yes, our antenna are equally everywhere. Our binocular vision are focused everywhere to make sure that security is at its crest. But I come here and now to tell you that the security situation is not one that we can help at this particular moment. And as a result of that, we have decided to put the NGO meeting on hold. And as a matter of fact, the holding of the NGO meeting would have been to lead us into two major points. The NGOs will be addressed on how to conduct themselves properly as the monies will hit their account, to make sure that they behave themselves cautiously. And secondly, when you know the date of the meeting of the NGO, then you eventually would know the date that disbursement will commence. But all said and done, there is no cause for alarm. I wish to inform you that we are already at the disbursement corridor. As many of you as trust in me and trust in Apostle Theophilus O. Ebonyi and believe in Theobald Global Foundation, I am saying it and reiterating it that we are at the disbursement corridor. It could happen sooner than you expect. I would like you to relax. We are there. This is Reverend Dr. Bartholomew Agbochano talking. I don't get involved in charade. I don't get involved in things that would work out. You expect this money to come. I expect it more. Because when this money comes, I will not only have the money, I will equally have the name. Theo will have the name more than me, and I too, I will have my own name when the disbursement goes through. So all of us are working around the clock to make sure that we deliver on our promises. You don't have any cause for alarm. I know a lot of you have waited for so long, you have expected for so long, there is no cause for alarm. You are like a woman that is in travail. By the moment the child is born, you remember the travail no more. And definitely, we are getting to that point. I would like your patience to have her perfect work. That is a scriptural injunction. So that you have been taught to be patient. But not only to be patient, but let your patience have her perfect work. Your patience has its perfect work by the moment what you are waiting for gets into your hand. I often get baffled when people say, okay, we have been patient enough, we have been patient enough. How long do we pray? And funny enough, a lot of them handle the Bible. Patience has no limit until what you are looking for gets into your hand. You shouldn't be patient halfway. No, that is not how to be patient. Except you don't believe in what you say you believe in. But if you believe in what you say you believe in, continue in your patience. I tell you and I reassure you, the day of celebration will hit you, and we are already at the corridor. Ladies and gentlemen, I am aware of several of you that are going through pains, that are going through stress. I am aware. I know of several people that private chat me. I am only looking for 1,000 naira to feed today. Those that I could give them, I gave them. And those that I could not give, I prayed for them. I said, don't worry. God is on top of the situation, and you will get to the point of celebration. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we are already there. Don't allow all these people who are all out to discourage have any influence on you. A lot of them are not in this project anymore. And just like the fowl will say, what I will not eat, let me scatter. That is all what they are out to do. And they are part of those whom we have had security reports that they might want to cause some mayhem in this meeting that we have planned. Yes, we know we are cautious, we are careful, and as we are careful, we wouldn't like to undermine anything. We wouldn't like to undermine anything. Meeting or no meeting, what is important is disbursement. And I tell you, and I reiterate on it, we are already there. You will get it sooner than you expect. Ladies and gentlemen, God bless you. I move ahead to the second point on my agenda. That is in connection with the payment modalities. Then, Theobald Global Foundation pays the NGOs. There's no contention about that. Now, the NGOs pay the cluster heads. There is no contention about that everywhere. Where the contention is whether the NGOs should disburse directly to the beneficiaries, or the NGOs, after disbursing to the cluster heads, what is meant for the cluster heads, you understand. Then the NGOs should disburse to the beneficiaries, or the cluster heads are the ones to disburse to the beneficiaries. Several schools of thought have rocked my private WhatsApp wall. Those who are for or against NGOs disbursing directly. Now, I come up in this way to address the matter. Those who said the NGOs should disburse to the beneficiaries, they accuse the cluster heads that why they would want to disburse to the beneficiaries directly is that when they disburse through the cluster heads, some of the cluster heads are planning to zoom off. Immediately, the money hits the account. And the cluster heads, on the other hand, are saying that why the NGO heads wouldn't want us to disburse is that they want to short pay the cluster, the beneficiaries. Now, the question that comes to mind is this. The NGO heads that are accusing the cluster heads that if they give to them, they will zoom off, and that they are the saints, they are the angels. Is it all the NGO heads that are angels? Are some NGO heads not dubious? I don't know of anyone, but although I don't know of anyone, it may not be too correct of me to say that they don't exist. I can't vouch for all NGO heads that they are angelic in their practices. On the other hand, can I vouch for the cluster heads that all of them, when this money is paid to them, will all of them be honest to disburse to the various beneficiaries? There could be some cluster heads that have the fear of God that will do the needful, and there are some that may not do the needful. Now, the modus operandi of practice is, however, that when TIOBA disburses to the NGO heads, the NGO heads disburses to the cluster heads, and the cluster heads disburse to the beneficiaries, irrespective of whether the cluster heads are corrupt or clean. In Nigeria, in the Nigerian federal system, yes, money leaves the federation account to the various ministries, to the various state governments for execution. It does not mean that all the state governors are clean. Does not mean that all the ministers are clean. Stealings are still going on. But that does not prevent the federal government from doing the needful. It does not prevent the federal government from doing the needful. When money would get to the various places, they go through the ministries. But then, the ministers, by the moment you are corrupt and you are caught, you face the music. That is what happens. So, despite the fact that the cluster heads may not be trusted, what has to be done still has to be done, because foul play cannot be identified only at one spot. The cluster heads could be corrupt, and the NGO heads could equally be corrupt. So, given these scenarios, then the necessary thing, the necessary path trajectory of operation should be maintained. So, as a result of that, money should leave TIOBA to the NGO heads, then from NGO heads to the cluster heads, then from the cluster heads to the beneficiaries. I think that is the normal thing that should happen. That is the normal thing that should happen. Now, given that scenario, there could be some intricacies involved. The NGO heads, there are some NGOs that all the clusters in their NGO, they were the one who harvested them themselves. They harvested them, but they appointed the cluster heads and put them there. That is to say that these NGO heads, they are closer to the beneficiaries than the cluster heads. It is possible like that because there are some NGO heads that after harvesting beneficiaries for one cluster, they go ahead again for the second, for the third, for the fifth, until they are able to get as much as 20, 30, 40, 50. They were the single people that went and drove the data, and they barely appointed the cluster heads and put them there. It was not the cluster heads that went and looked for the beneficiaries. And so, since it was not the cluster heads that went and looked for the beneficiaries, but that it is the NGO heads that have vested the beneficiaries themselves, but just barely appointed the cluster heads. Then, in that situation and circumstance, the NGO head disbursing directly to the beneficiaries, there wouldn't be any contention about that. And there are some situations that the NGO heads, after registering with TIOBA, after obtaining the form, and they were looking for clusters to make them qualify, because after registering with TIOBA as an NGO, you need at least 20 clusters to be qualified. Some people, after they have obtained the form, they don't have the clusters, and they don't, even if they have the clusters, they don't have the money to pay for the clusters. And so they go ahead looking for clusters, and people who don't have NGOs but have clusters, they submitted the clusters and pay for the clusters. If they submitted the clusters and pay for the clusters, those people are closer to the beneficiaries that they submitted the clusters than you, the NGO head. In that situation, it may not be very good. It may not be even good if you boycott the cluster heads and go ahead and begin to deal with the beneficiaries. You will fumble. You will commit blunder that may spring up some issues more than you expect. Cluster heads submitted the clusters to you, those that they have gone and have vested by themselves and they know them, and they equally pay for the clusters. How would you just bypass them and go and begin to disburse to the beneficiaries that they brought themselves and they paid for them? I don't think that is correct enough. In this situation, it should be the cluster heads that should disburse to their beneficiaries because they know them. Because if you now say, okay, you will be the one to disburse to these beneficiaries, what if you miss one beneficiary? You miss one beneficiary. It is this cluster heads that brought the names to you that know them. If you miss one beneficiary, will the beneficiaries now bypass the cluster heads to come and hold you? To come and hold you? Is it possible like that? No. It is those cluster heads that brought to those beneficiaries that are responsible and accountable to those beneficiaries. And as a result of that, courtesy demands, common sense would tell us that this money should pass through the hands of such cluster heads to the beneficiaries for proper responsibility and accountability. That is what should be in that situation. Now, the question here is this. As a cluster head that brought cluster to an NGO head, and you also paid for that cluster, there's a limit to an amount of money that should hit your private account. There's a limit to an amount of money that should hit your private account. I am not a banker. But what I heard last is it shouldn't be more than 5 million. If it is more than 5 million, you will become into question. You will be called to answer some questions. But if monies should enter your account without boundary, then the existing law in the banking sector now is that you should open a subsidiary corporate account as a cluster head. Because all these NGOs, before they registered with TIOVAT, you must have your CAC, yes, certificate. You must have your tax identification certificate. You must have your SCOMO. That's what makes you an NGO, a qualified, registered member of an NGO that is with TIOVAT. But now, you as a cluster head, you may not be demanded to bring the SCOMO, but the new existing banking law requires that you open a subsidiary corporate account. And in opening a subsidiary corporate account, the bankers will demand you to present the Corporate Affairs Commission certificate and the tax identification number. Now, you that submitted the clusters and you know your beneficiaries and you paid for the clusters, do you have these requirements? If you have these requirements, then it will need the cluster head to come into an agreement with you. Come into an agreement, because that is what I am going to do. If all my cluster heads have their subsidiary corporate account, I'll disburse to them directly. Let them disburse to the cluster, to the beneficiaries. It eases my work. It eases my work. I must not trust everybody before I do some certain things, because I can't trust everybody, because everybody is accountable for himself. What I need to do is to make sure I do the needful. If I push it from my own table and it comes to your own table and you mess it up and I can't get you, well, God can get you and you go in for it. But as I disburse to you, I will have the oversight function on you to the best of my knowledge. I may not be able to detect all the frauds in the system, but I'll try my best. But anyhow, I try my best. There will be some areas that I cannot go. There will be some areas that I cannot go. Me, on my own, when the money hits my account, my cluster heads, I call them. How many of you have subsidiary corporate account? As many as have them, I'll disburse to their accounts. Let them disburse to the beneficiaries. And I will cast my binocular vision on them to the best of my ability. Yes, of course, TIOVAT, as an organization, as a grant handler, is aiming 50 million Nigerians to bless. But actually, if he were left to disburse directly to this 50 million Nigeria, will you kill him? How will he be able to do that? You want to kill him? He won't subject himself into that much stress. What he is demanded to do is to make sure that he disburses to the cluster head, to the NGO heads. By the moment he finishes disbursing to the NGO heads neatly, he has washed his hands clean from the supervision of his donors. You know, there are papers that he still has to present to his donors to show that he has done what he said he would do. And when he does that, then Theobald herself will cast oversight function on the NGO heads to make sure that the NGO heads do the needful by disbursing to the cluster heads. Yes, he will try to do that. And by the moment he is able to assure himself that the NGO heads have done all these things properly, then would you expect him to cast his binocular vision to the beneficiaries to see that all the beneficiaries receive their amount? Will you kill him? He's a human being. He may not be able to do that. The beneficiaries will be left for the NGO heads to supervise, to follow the cluster heads, to make sure that they disburse to the beneficiaries as they have promised to do. By the moment the NGO heads disburse to the cluster heads neatly without any mistake, the NGO heads will have washed their hands clean from the supervision of Theobald. Now, the ball now is in the court of the cluster heads. By the moment the cluster heads are able to disburse to the beneficiaries correctly, then they will have washed themselves clean from the supervisory functions of the NGO heads. This is what would make life better and easier. That is what actually should happen. The cluster heads should not disburse to the beneficiaries because of corruption, because of running away with money, may not be a very nice excuses. Looking at the fact that there are some corrupt practices that will happen in the system does not mean that you should not do the right thing, that you should not do what is normal. What is actually normal is this sequence of operation that I have analyzed. Now, looking at the scenario that getting a corporate account, getting a subsidiary corporate account may be difficult for some cluster heads, I wish to profile the following operation to help everybody. Let the NGO heads and the cluster heads work together. Let no NGO head disburse directly to the beneficiaries without the consent of the cluster heads that brought the clusters containing the beneficiaries of 1,000. It is not correct. It is not correct. My own advice is, by the moment any NGO head notices that a cluster head has a subsidiary corporate account, disburse to the cluster head and put the cluster head under supervision to ensure that he does the needful. If Theobald himself can trust you that you will disburse to the cluster heads, then you should also trust the cluster heads that they will disburse to the beneficiaries. Because nobody is an angel. You can get a corrupt person anywhere. You can get a corrupt person at the cluster level. You can also get a corrupt person at the NGO level. So, given that scenario, part trajectory of The normal thing should be followed. What about those cluster heads that don't have subsidiary corporate account? Let the NGO heads call them when it is time for disbursement to the beneficiaries and enter into a consent letter. Enter into a consent letter. Any cluster that the NGO head would like to disburse to, let it be done in the presence of the cluster head of that cluster. And let a consent letter be entered into. Let a consent letter be drafted on the letter-headed paper of that NGO, indicating that so number of beneficiaries have been disbursed to, and let it be signed by the cluster heads, and let it be countersigned by the NGO head. Do that for as many clusters as you have. They will be part of the documents you will submit to Theobald Global Foundation for transparency in its crest. That is what should happen. No NGO head should present himself as a demigod. Because you being an NGO head, it may not be that you are better than the person you are heading, than the person that is a cluster head. Is an opportunity which should not be abused. It's God that gave you that position. Even me that is addressing you today, God gave me this position to address you. It's not that I'm better than everybody. I'm better than some people, and there are several other people that are better than me. Forget my intonation. I am as humble as anything as I'm addressing you people. I'm as humble as anything. I don't look at myself as being better than you people. I acknowledge the fact that a lot of you are better than me. Even those that I have as cluster heads under me, a lot of them are better than me. So I look at my position as being over them as a mere privilege, and as such, I do my thing with the fear of God. Therefore, NGO heads, bring the cluster heads together and be friendly with yourselves. Be friendly with yourselves. Yes, those of you that are NGO heads, you are advocating transparency. Those that are also cluster heads, they are advocating transparency. Come together and meet at a junction. Come together and meet at the junction. Why I am saying this is to forestall issues after disbursement. Is to forestall issues after disbursement. You that are NGO heads, those beneficiaries that you have vested themselves and you know them, disburse to them directly. But those ones that some cluster has brought that you don't know them, if you must disburse to them, do that with the presence of the cluster heads and let his consent follow it. That is what I have to say. And on this note, I want to plead with everybody across board. If we claim to be Christians, this is when we have to demonstrate it, not in church. If we claim to be Muslims, This is where we have to demonstrate it, not in the mosque. If we claim to be somewhat, this is the avenue to demonstrate it. Because God is watching everybody. On this note, I want to draw the curtain here. Let everybody's mind relax. We are already there. We are already there. Let us bring ourselves together. Please, NGO heads, call your cluster heads. Call them very close and be very close with them. And you cluster heads, make sure you know your beneficiaries. And don't short pay anybody. Don't short pay anybody. The little that the poor man has is better than the abundance that the rich man has. The greatest of all gifts on earth is peace. That thing that you do, that you have peace with yourself, is ever the greatest. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, in Grand Colony in Nigeria, may the peace of the Lord God Almighty remain with you. And I want to release an elderly blessing upon everybody. All of us will handle this money and we will enjoy this money to the fullest. Thank you so much. God bless you.